Good afternoon. Right away, I want to say this is for my cybersecurity class. My name is Ben Langline Johnson. My instructor is Faisal Kaleem. This video is solely for educational purposes. I am not liable for any damages that could be caused using these demonstrations. Right away, my presentation is going to be about cyber attacks. As you can see here, I will talk about what they are and what they may cause, describing them, I guess. Um, Cyber attacks. The definition, I guess, we'll start with. According to Webster Dictionary online, cyber attack is defined as an attempt to gain illegal access to a computer or computer system for the purpose of causing damage or harm to a network um, or a computer to get confidential data or any data that the attacker is wanting um, for informational purposes, I guess. Otherwise, Techopedia.com takes cyber attack definition a little bit more in depth, a bit further. Cyber attack is deliberate exploitation of computer systems, technology dependent enterprises, and networks. It can destroy businesses, which we'll talk about a little bit further in this presentation. Um, yeah, so we'll go with start with some consequences here. Some consequences: identity theft, which is big. That's probably one of the, I'll say, easiest attacks between passwords and whatnot, which we'll also cover here. Um, a lot of times people don't think about that, and especially with a lot of devices nowadays. It's pretty. People don't want to make strong enough passwords, and then with Facebook, they decide to put information out there that hackers like. But anyways, fraud, extortion, malware, phishing, spamming, spoofing, and spyware. We'll go over malware, phishing, and spoofing and spyware here shortly also. Another consequences are stolen hardware, such as laptops or mobile devices, especially with remote workers. Um, Leaving them in a car gets stolen, pretty soon your device is gone, and you got to make sure you can get a hold of your IT to get that devices shut off, or at least try to see if you can corrupt it yourself. Maybe, I don't know. Denial of service and distributed denial of service, breach and access, password sniffing, system infiltration, website defacement, private and public browser exploits, instant messaging abuse, intellectual property theft, or unauthorized access. Unauthorized access could just be somebody leaving their login up and running, and another coworker comes and now they have access to that person's login. So we have to make sure that we people log out. Cyber attacks and what they cause. So these are a list of some cyber attacks. I tried to list, for the most part, not just what types, but what actual kinds of cyber attacks there are. Um, so we'll talk about these. So there's birthday attacks, brute force password attacks, IP address spoofing, hijacking, replay attack, man in the middle, masquerading, eavesdropping, which eavesdropping is still out there. It's not as bad as it was before. Social engineering, phreaking, farming, malware, rootkits, and spyware. So with birthday attacks, it's a vulnerability that is used to recover plain text data and obtain sensitive information by remote attacker capturing large amounts of encrypted traffic between servers and the client. To avoid this, mitigate, we make the hash function size larger or large enough so it prevents a brute force attack, making the data a bigger size or so it's harder to get into. Brute force attack. This is when an attacker tries different passwords on a system until one of them is successful. Basically, it doesn't stop. Attacker uses trial and error to get the user's information, such as login info, encryption keys. Hackers as many attempts as possible to retrieve, users as many attempts as possible to retrieve the data they want. Kind of, I guess that's kind of redundant, but they don't stop until they get it. That's why it's brute force. They do whatever they can to get into it. Usually the attacker employs a software program to try all possible combinations of a likely password, user ID, or security code until it locates a match. A type of brute force attack is dictionary attack. It's a simple attack where the attacker uses a program to retrieve words from the dictionary, finding poorly created passwords made by the user, such as password. I mean, I actually work with some people that use that password, and being working from an organization, it's not good, or even using the same letters at the end. So let's, for instance, use uppercase password and all of a sudden exclamation points, and then after every reset, they just add another exclamation point for the next 180 days, and so on. That's still not a good password. Excuse me. IP address spoofing. A hacker changes a source address so the receiving computer system thinks it is from a trusted source, like another computer. That computer then accepts the changed address. This is used in denial of service attacks. We will go over denial of service attacks later in this presentation. Ways for IT to mitigate this are monitoring atypical activity or abnormal activity, more bandwidth being used, deploying packet filtering to detect inconsistencies, use robust verification methods, more than just a password, using a network attack blocker, or authenticating all IP addresses. So hijacking, this is when the attacker takes control of a session between two machines and masquerades as one of them. We'll go over masquerades in a little while. This is also a man in the middle. We'll also go over. Man in the middle hijacking is when an attacker uses a program to take control of a connection by masquerading as each end of the connection. Browser or URL hijacking is when the user is directed to a different website than what he or she requested, usually to a fake page that the attacker has created, which is also called typo squatting. Now with this, I know, for instance, with my junk mail, I have Hotmail, and I get spams from like Amazon, trying to think some other ones, but Amazon was a big one, I know, a couple of years ago, even maybe last year. People would click on the link thinking they, or Netflix, that's how, thinking they need to reset their password or something. So somebody makes it a link, looks like an Amazon.com link. They click on it, comes up with what looks like to be an Amazon.com legit website. Turns out when they start loading or logging in, they use their username and password for the actual Amazon, and then then they just gave their information to a hacker or a spammer. Session hijacking, the attacker attempts to take over an existing connection between two network computers. The attacker initially takes control of a network device on the LAN, which enables the attacker to determine the sequence numbers used by the sender and receiver. The attacker then uses the sequence number to generate traffic that appears to come from one of the communicating parties, which steals the session from one of the users. The attacker then overloads the communicating device and makes it drop out of the session. Ways to prevent this by using unique key sequence numbers and web session cookies. Unique sequence numbers are a great way to, instead of just more like random, I guess, just a unique to fit that one and not doubling up. That's what unique means. Replay attack, when an attacker eavesdrops on a secure network communication, intercepts it, and then fraudulently delays or resends it to misdirect the receiver into doing what the hacker wants. This attack involves capturing packets from a network and retransmit to produce authorized attacks. Prevent by creating a random session key using timestamps on all messages, so the sender and the receiver can see whether or how long or it's taken to receive a message or be sent. Of course, that's what a timestamp means. Use or have a password for each transaction that is only used once. So kind of like a crypto key, I guess, could be a good one for that. An encrypted key, I should say. Sorry, my footage. Man in the middle, like I was talking about a little earlier with hijacking. It's mentioned in hijacking, which is a type of man in the middle. This is when an attacker intercepts messages between two parties before transferring them onto their intended destination by taking advantage of the multi-hop process that is used by many types of networks. This is also a type of eavesdropping, which I mentioned earlier, which we will also talk about in a while, a little bit more in depth. Prevent man in the middle having a strong encryption mechanism on wireless access points. This is a good one for remote workers. Use VPNs, maybe even a double authentication to get into a password, and like a biometric would help with that. Masquerading. With this attack, one user or computer pretends to be another user or computer to gain access to personal computer information. Person we receive, say, email maybe, and it's more like a different one, but these can happen in different ways. Insider attack, where a user is stealing another user's ID and password, or someone not logging out of their session and the attacker uses that person's session, which I also talked about earlier. Vulnerable authentication helps the attacker to gain access. It's an easy way to gain access. This could be one of the easier ones. To help with this, we create algorithms that can detect these actions, making sure we're logging out of our desktops, switching users, even just restarting computers. That way you know everything is logged out after you're done using it. This could be if we don't have the computer shut down again and we forget it in the car or it's on. Again, if it gets stolen, it's somebody else is going to get the information. Eavesdropping. This is also called sniffing, which is a theft of information that is transmitted over a network by a computer or other device that is connected to that network, usually when a network is not secured. This is form of man in middle, which we talked about right here. Prevent this, high encryption awareness, network segmentation, update and patch software, which is huge, and shielding. A lot of cyber attacks, as long as we have to just be aware and updating a lot. It's crucial, especially with the updating and patching. If We have workers that keep postponing the update, and we're not getting the patches and the um, firewall updates, for instance, that we need. So we have to make sure that we are updating when needed to. Social engineering: an attacker uses deception to gain access to resources in an IT infrastructure. Usually involves misleading authorized users into executing actions for unauthorized users. Some examples are phishing attacks, which I will also go over in a later slide. The main prevention and social awareness: make sure users are not giving out any information to unknown users or personnel. Phone calls, wanting information, um, even just phone numbers. Like, if it can be found on a company website, yeah, maybe you can give a phone number, but um, you can get spam calls all the time, and you don't know who's going to give what information out once they get that number. People can pretend to be a lot of different people nowadays. Phreaking: this involves a telephone system when an attacker hacks into a telecommunication network. Hackers have usually studied this and are experienced in telecommunications and understands how to exploit the phone network by mimicking dial tones. Unfortunately, according to PCWorld.com, this is still possible with Android on LTE and the using denial of service, which is covered later. We prevent this by frequently changing PIN numbers, including voicemail, and ensure passwords are random. I don't, even with security questions, and nowadays a lot of security questions are the same. A lot of times with Facebook is putting things out there, say, what's your favorite color or something, and people will respond to it. Well, now they just got their favorite color and their name. So it's tricky nowadays. So you have to make sure the pins and passwords are random. Phishing is a type of fraud when an attacker attempts to trick the victim into providing information such as credit card numbers, passwords, dates of birth, bank account numbers, automated teller machines, ATM pins, and social security numbers. Usually this is to commit identity theft by email or instant message. One variation of phishing is spear phishing, where one targets to a specific group or type of individual, such as a company's system administrators. Administrators have a lot of access, more than usually like their subordinates. So hackers are going to go after them. Email phishing is the most common type since 1990s. Hackers send emails to any and all email addresses they can obtain. I have 2 emails, well, technically 3 counting my school one, but I use one for not personal stuff, and then I have one that is personal. Like my Hotmail is just basically, if I'm going to order something from Amazon, I don't want spam going to my Gmail account, or vice versa. Like my Gmail account is strictly business and personal, so I know who and what is, getting my emails. Leading organization impersonated by phishers worldwide: 13% Microsoft, 11% Google, 10% Facebook, 10% Apple, and 6% PayPal. A lot of people don't think about this when it happens. They're just thinking it's an app and that the app is going to protect them. But they'll protect a little bit. We have to learn how to protect ourselves sometimes. Farming: this is when an attacker creates a fake website that looks real. The user will type in the actual website but be redirected as a fake website unknowingly. The attacker is then able to obtain personal and private information. So be aware of what websites you visit. Update security software whenever possible, and be cognizant of emails that are being opened. I know in my organization we have it to where they do test our information security. We'll send out a spam looking email. It's not actually, it's just them. And if you click on it, then 10 minutes later you failed this thing. You got to make sure that you don't do this, and then you have to take this test to prove that you know that you messed up and don't do it again. Otherwise, a lot of people just respond to it, and if we do get it, we have to make sure that we send it to them via an attachment, forward it to them through an attachment, and not just the email itself. Malware or malicious software designed to infiltrate one or more target computers and follow an attacker's instructions. Some types of malware are ransomware, virus, worms, trojans, rootkits, and spyware. Ransomware is an attacker breaks into a system to steal confidential information or delete information. Usually a business is locked out of its network or computer system and then is asked to pay a sum of money in order to be able to get back into their network system. Sometimes if ransom is paid, the data is still not there, which a lot of times the government will say don't pay the ransom because they're either going to get the data back or they're not. It's 50-50. If they pay it, they just paid a lot of money without getting anything back. And then they just lost a lot of money and their data. Ransomware attacks in 2020, government, manufacturing, services, education, and healthcare services, I believe, are like utilities, gas companies, stuff like that. Virus, software program that attaches itself to or copies itself into another program on a computer. This is to trick the computer into following instructions not intended by the original program developer. Users copy infected files from another computer on a network. A virus infects a host program and may cause that host program to be replicated, to replicate itself to other computers. A worm is a self-contained program that replicates and sends copies of itself to other computers without any user input or action. So it just does it automatically, whether viruses infect a host program, but usually it's going to take help. A worm is made to reduce network availability by using up its bandwidth, which will end up slowing the network down. It can cause, like, say, there's a software program that's uses or that does door access, for instance, and all of a sudden the bandwidth to the network or the network's down, it's not going to work. So either people are going to be able to access rooms that they shouldn't, or people aren't going to be able to get into the rooms that they should. This Trojan horse hides itself as a useful working program, basically to fool users into thinking they are programs, but once opened, they hide malicious code onto computers. Usually this is to collect sensitive information, open backdoors into computers, or actively upload and download files. A lot of times this can slow down your computer. Some other things just pop up when you don't expect it, and they kind of just eat away at it. Rootkits modify or replace one or more existing programs to hide traces of attacks. They provide attackers with easy access to compromised computers to launch additional attacks. Kind of like I guess a toilet bowl. Once you get one, it just keeps going. Spyware specifically attacks confidential information. This gathers information using the internet connection without the user's knowledge, such as an email address and passwords. Since spyware uses memory, it can cause the computer to crash. Some prevention for malware: install antivirus and anti-spyware software, anti-malware. Use secure authentication methods. Use administrator accounts only when absolutely necessary, not guests. Keep software updated. Control access to systems. Adhere to the least privilege model. Limit application privileges. Implement email security and spam protection. Monitor for suspicious activity. Easiest and the most useful, I shouldn't say most useful because all these are useful, but we have to make sure that everybody understands and uses their best judgment not to get viruses on the computer. So denial of service is an attack meant to shut down a machine or network, making it inaccessible to its intended users, which is done by flooding the target traffic or sending it information so it crashes. Denial of service attacks have two general methods: flooding services or crashing services. DOS prevention, prevent spoofing by checking to make sure source address matches origin address. Limit broadcasting, streamline incident response, making sure everyone is aware and quickly to respond, or there's a quicker response. So when it happens, a lot of people get that same alert, so everybody's on it right away and working together to get it out right away. Protect endpoints by ensuring they are patched. Ensure firewalls are limiting traffic. That's another talked about before. Look for abnormalities in traffic, bandwidth, and all that, or CPU usage. Monitor the network, being on the lookout for abnormalities with inbound traffic. How cyber attacks can destroy business, destruction of customer trust. Customers will lose trust and leave. Not only customers, but customers' partners will be lost also. A lot of customers work together. So when you lose one customer, word gets around, pretty soon that next person that we thought we were going to get, they're not going to come around either because the other person didn't trust us. Business and profits will decrease. Companies that fail to protect data often lose contracts. Companies may need to offer good discounts to persuade customers to stay, which then loses money. Disruption of operations. If attacked by malware or virus, the business's system may still work, but it will slow down drastically. Loss of intellectual property is the unique knowledge a business possesses that give it a competitive advantage or similar companies in similar industries. Insurance cost spikes. If you are a business that is at a higher risk, your insurance is going to cost drastically more, especially if this has happened to you in the past. Insurance companies are going to want to make sure that premium is pretty high, because chances are it'll happen again, or they think they will. Common attacks on small businesses. For the most part, this is what I found: ransomware, phishing, password attack, denial of service, and man in the middle is what that's supposed to say. Prevalent attacks on larger businesses: phishing emails and malicious software. Excuse me. Emails are huge. It doesn't take much for a business to people to get just emails from a business. A lot of times, every worker has the same two-point email address besides their name, like @childrensandmen.org. Everybody's going to have that as their address. Cloud-based attacks on SaaS offerings such as Microsoft Teams, ransomware, direct attacks on remote workers. Leading cyber threats targeting organizations. We have malware viruses. Malware, which are viruses, worms, Trojans at 3.74. Phishing, phishing attacks, ransomware, account takeover, credential abuse attacks, denial of service, web application attacks, advanced persistent threats, insider threats, data alteration by employees themselves. Maybe a employee decided they want to embezzle or something, and so they're going to start changing numbers around. It's more embezzlement, but trying to change processes, or even if somebody is well aware of the network, maybe even trying to hook to the network itself and putting viruses in. Zero-day attacks against publicly unknown vulnerabilities. In conclusion, with technology only growing, these are all still very much reasons to make sure data is secure. Between passwords, firewalls, and authentications, we need to be diligent at keeping our data safe. I believe that cyber attacks will always be here. How we adapt and prepare is our own decisions. Thank you for your time and watching my presentation. And here are my references.